Good morning, everybody. All right. We're going to get to the Christian Heritage course. I'm excited to get into Philly. Who's been to Philadelphia? Yeah? Great place. What's it mean? The name? Brotherly love. City of brotherly love, right? And the ever been to up the Rocky Steps where he'd made that run up there? There you go. I didn't run it, but anyway. Yeah. So here's what we're going to do. I said last week I was going to stay one more week in New York, and I go, I don't have that much time from now till June. So talking about America's Christian heritage, what I want to do first of all is give you a little preview of Philadelphia and some of the hot spots. Some of the many of them we will be seeing, but I'm not going to do this. Actually, recently Fox News did a great little 5-minute summary, and I thought when I watched it, I go, I'm going to use that. That's what I love nowadays about this. I had something happen in 2010 in Independence Hall that will blow your circuits, and I probably won't be able to get to it till next time because it takes a little tracking, having to do about a guide who was in there showing us Tumble's picture, I think that's the name of him, of the 56 founders who signed the Declaration of Independence. It's in Independence Hall is in Philadelphia. That's where they adopted the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's just such a perfect time. I'm getting my food for those of you online. Little bit of breakfast. I've been up. So in this area, there's about 100 of us filling this thing up, and I asked the question to the guide, it's a national park, right? Department of Interior. So he was saying everything smart about all the 56 founders. I'm like so impressed by this guy's knowledge. So I had to raise my hand. Sitting next to me was Jim Garlow from Skyline Wesleyan Church in San Diego. He goes, uh-oh. And I raised my hand. And then I said to him, I said, about the 56 founders, could you tell me a little bit about their religious background? Just went religious. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to tell you what happened because it was a whopper. And the response, like so many other places I've been to, just blew me away. The lack of knowledge that when it came to the Christian foundations of our country and of these founders, went right out the door. And actually, he became quite antagonistic. And I'm sitting here thinking, right in this place where the Continental Congress met. Amazing. So I'm teasing you a little bit with that, but I'll come back to it. Before you start that, Stephen, let me mention, because I mentioned last time about New York being, at one point, the capital was there, right? And another time it was in Philadelphia, and then it was in Washington, D.C. It was actually in 8 or 9 places over time, but sometimes just for a month or a week. Like there's one time right in the middle of Amish country, it was right there. Baltimore, it was there for a little bit. Now, why would it have jumped around so much during those years? Because of the war. When the Brits came in, they were in Philadelphia for a while in the beginning. When the Brits came in and started taking over Philadelphia, they're like, gotta go. And so literally the capital jumped around like 8 or 9 times before it settled. It settled there in 1790. George Washington became president in 1789, and he was actually took the oath of office. Does anybody know where? In New York, at the Federal Building, and you go there and you say, it's the Federal Building where the Congress would have met. I understand it's a resurrected Federal Building, but there's actually a statue of George Washington right there. And you're right at Wall Street. So it's the most, when you walk up there, you got to realize New York was not New York. I mean, there's dirt streets. And so when I described to you last time, Christ Church down the road, Christ Church is about 4 or 5 across the street from Ground Zero, about 4 or 5 blocks away. Trinity Church is the mother church. they created Christ Church as an outreach to another part of the city because people weren't going to walk 5 blocks down a dirt path. Isn't that something? So when Christ Church burnt down, and they had to redo it, and I think it was about 1790 when they put it back together. George Washington and a number of them went to church down at Christ Church, or Christ Chapel, where we will visit, which is right across from Ground Zero. So it's just weird because you're right in the middle of Manhattan and all these skyscrapers, and you just can't picture New York when it didn't have any of that. So he took the oath of office there. Right after the oath of office, he turned around and he went down to the chapel to church. A bunch of the founders did. So anyway, I had all of this knowledge when we went down to Philadelphia to have this one dialogue, and I got to tell you about it, but I'm just telling you, it'll blow your circuits. So the news got a hold of it, got a whole spin back in 2010. That was when I was working with the Norrises, but this one I just couldn't believe. So anyway, but in order for you to get acclimated with Philadelphia and some of the background, good old Fox News put together this clip. You ready? Attaboy. Stephen, you do such a great job what you're doing. I know. Go. Enjoy this. It's 5 minutes.
All right, did you know that Philadelphia, where we are right now, was the nation's first capital?
That's right, not D.C. The city of brotherly
Turn it
love
up,
is full
please.
of fascinating historical sites, many of which still stand and are used by hundreds of tourists today.
It's a great place to learn about the American history. And you've read how the revolution was won by George Washington and the Secret Six with the spy ring. But I wanted to learn more about how the American Revolution actually started and took root and what role Philadelphia played in it. And it was a big one. Watch. Welcome to Independence Hall, Philadelphia. This is the birthplace of America. This is the cradle of liberty. And here's why. In this very room, the Declaration of Independence would be signed by 56 separate people representing 13 colonies. Oh, love Independence Hall. Every American's got to see it. But to be honest, I've seen it before. I've been to Philadelphia before. I need someone that's going to bring me inside Philadelphia.
Do you need a historian?
I need a historian.
Anthony Melita, Revolution Tours.
And you're a professional.
I am.
Do you have some time now?
I do.
Can you bring me through?
I can.
Show me things about the city I've never seen before.
And how they work.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Ooh, wait a second. What if I found 3 kids, even though it's summer, that want to learn ages 10 to 15?
Let's take them.
You would allow me to take them? What if it was Sophia, Marissa, and Jason?
Let's take them.
Is that you 3?
Yeah.
Can you go?
Yeah.
Did you tell your parents?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Let's go.
All right, Anthony, why have you brought us to this open-air building?
This is the President's House. From 1790 to 1800, this is where the President of the United States, from Washington to Adams, resided.
What about the White House?
The White House wasn't under construction yet.
You can see they found the old foundation there. You see the floor plan as it existed when it was originally built. All right, the next stop on our tour, Tony, you brought us to Carpenter's Hall.
This is the site of the First Continental Congress. This is where 12 colonies gathered together to redress grievances against the crown.
Isn't it 13 colonies?
It's actually 12 because Georgia's not represented.
1774 was the year.
September 5th.
September 5th.
This is where the idea of nationhood really came into being.
Welcome to Christ Church.
There's a gravestone over there, James Wilson. Should I know him?
You should, because he was famous as a signer of the Declaration, but more importantly, he's the creator in the Constitution of the 3/5 Compromise and the Electoral College.
The Electoral College, which we're still dealing with today.
Absolutely.
What's significant about these pews?
Well, these pews do not look like the 18th century pews, but they do have markers on them. For example, Benjamin Franklin's family pew,
Which is?
number 70.
Neil, big book on the altar has to be important.
It is. It is perhaps Christ Church's most important historical document. It is the chaplain of the Continental Congress's Book of Common Prayer from 1776.
Can you see this, Sophia? What are you seeing here?
It's just crossed out. I don't really know why.
Someone, we don't know who, has crossed out the prayers for the royal family. And in the margin notes, you can read the prayer that has been substituted.
New country, new prayer, new allegiance. Anthony, we have a Washington Square Park in New York, but this is a different Washington Square Park, the original, really.
This is the home to 2,000 Continental Army dead.
They are buried here.
They're buried here, 2,000 of them in unmarked graves all throughout the park.
2,000 people in it, all buried.
Absolutely. All those fancy words from the Declaration of Independence, they had to be made true somehow.
And hence the eternal flame that burns behind, right in front of George Washington's statue. It's amazing. You know, we don't know the names of anybody here, but we know what they did and we know what they sacrificed. And think about it. No conventions, no elections, no America without what they did.
Absolutely right. These are the workhorses of the revolution and the republic that would follow.
You guys had a good day?
No, we had a great day.
Thanks so much for being here. Jason, Marissa, Sophia, Anthony, I think you guys earned some breakfast.
Oh, that's
a great
Brian.
tour. Did those kids get credit?
Yeah, I don't know. It was summer. They came down. Those are homeschool kids. They enjoyed it.
Great.
There was so much more to see in the city. That is just a small slice.
I love that that was Ben Franklin's church. That was the pew he actually sat in with his family.
They have a pew. Look like you can set up a picnic table in them.
Yeah.
Right? They face them. You can get more than just 4 people across.
Right.
Because they have, you can basically set up a little
Right.
stack table.
Isn't it fascinating when you walk in these
Yeah.
places and you actually are in the spot where the Constitution was signed,
Well, I
walking
mean,
the grounds of where our founding
Benjamin
fathers...
Franklin, for example, describes looking out and seeing the water right down this main road, and it's the exact spot when he turns around where his office was. You could see exactly what he saw prior to the revolution.
Wow.
And the great thing is, it's all in a little district, a historical district right over by the Liberty Bell. You can make a day of it and learn so much about the country you never knew.
Fascinating city, and you can grab a cheesesteak on the route.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I don't know if they had them then.
Cheesesteak. So, that was just a little bit of a taste. Let me tell you this. I have where I'm going to go with this. I'm going to actually tell you my response. I may even make you a copy of the response that I wrote to the Department of Interior, because it gives a lot of the historical background as far as to people's faith like George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, who are normally just plastered by people of being deist, agnostics, and it's what's amazing. So let me just kind of brief you. I've got 5 minutes to tell you. I'll at least set the stage for it. So about 50 of us were touring, and what happens is you go into Independence Hall, where they put together, the Continental Congress met there, 1774, right before, I think when the Brits came in, that's apparently, you know, like I said, they left there. They came back in 1790, and the whole time they were building the U.S. Capitol, which was for that decade, moved down to Washington, D.C. in 1800. During that time, they were in Philadelphia. So you saw the President's house, the White House, and they did all their business there in Independence Hall. So as you walk in, you see that big depiction of the 56 signers that's up there, and the tour guide, which you can imagine, be the tour guide for Independence Hall. Do you think you got to know your stuff? I mean, you have to, right? You think so. I'm like, this is going to be great. The researcher inside of me sat in there, and I'm sitting there with Jim. We're sitting there talking. I'm like, and he's huge bit of Christian history buff. And so we're listening to him, and he just, actually, here's how he did it. He said, what can you tell me about these people on the, that signed the Declaration of Independence? And so people started grabbing the obvious names, right? And then I'm like, I don't know where he's on there, but I'm like, John Witherspoon. He's in there. He's like, I like this. And then wait a few minutes, people, then I'm like, Benjamin Rush. And I'm like, I don't know where he is. But I only got, I don't know. I was sitting there thinking I probably got 15 names. I mean, because there was literally roughly 250 founders. That's the truth. Those that were involved, 56 in the Declaration of Independence, about 50 in the U.S. Constitution. We'll get to those. But, and then another 90 plus that were just working in different areas, different governors, and at the time. So he'd go through, and people would throw out a guess. James Carroll. And he's like, nope, James Carroll was down in Virginia at the time. And he'd go off, and I was like, wow. I mean, any person we brought up as a name, all of a sudden he was telling us what he was doing and whether or not he was in that picture and where he was at. I'm like, this is just impressive. This guy's telling us everything about the founders. So I thought, I'm going to hear the best Christian history ever. Yeah, right. I really was. I thought, if anybody's going to go into the Christian history of these guys, this guy. So I just kept it very generic. Like I say, I raised my hand. Garlow goes, uh-oh. And I said, could you tell me a little bit about the religious background of the founders? And I looked, I'm like, go. I tell you, his whole demeanor changed in Independence Hall. That's what was amazing about this. He changed. He goes, well, that's open for a lot of interpretation. I'm going, funny, nothing else was, And then he said, this is the truth. He goes, he said, George Washington, like this. He goes, Benjamin Franklin, this is what they always grab. It's always what liberals grab. Thomas Jefferson says, deist, maybe. A deist is a person who believes that God started but didn't intervene in the human affairs. And I'll show you how that's wrong about each one of them next time we're together. But he mentions them, and he says, George Washington, he goes, he didn't even go to church. Okay. I about vomited. I didn't. Garlow, just at that point, Garlow's all, I think he did. He went to church 5 blocks away. He has one of those pews you saw in Christ Church. He went to church up in New York at Christ Chapel at Trinity Church. He went to church down by Mount Vernon in Michigan, his estate. He was actually, you will not believe, and I'm just like, I mean, I was, okay, can I just tell you this? I was pissed off because that's theological, Dennis. It's a righteous thing. We're sitting here in Independence Hall, and this guy's talking like this. He goes, this is the truth. This is what he said. And he walked just like this. He goes, just because somebody carries around a big old Bible doesn't make him a believer. Just like that. My heart, just telling you, it starts to flutter all over again. So I got to stop there. I can hear Faye Ullman online. Stop. So I want to tell you. I'll tell you when we're together next week of my response, and I'll bring some copies so you can see that a document I wrote to the Department of the Interior and the superintendent in that area to get this guy either fired or trained, because what it told me was how bad the training was, right? I mean, they had training in all these other areas, but this. Anyway, I got to stop. Hate when that happens. I'll catch up with you from there next time. So I'll bring some copies of that for you.